Hey guys, on this episode of the Painting Business Pro Show, I've got my buddy Dustin Hunter joining me on the show. And in 1 year, he doubled his profit while working less and being less stressed in his business. And he's got more traction going forward in his business than he's ever had before. And Dustin runs about $1 million company. For years, he's been stuck at like 1 to 1.3 million, struggling to get team members to stick, making low margins, working his ass to the bone, and not spending as much time as he wants with his family. And he has made an enormous change in the last year. And it was a really simple few changes that we made to make it happen. So in this episode, we're going to dive into his background, what he was struggling with, where he was stuck, and then the changes he made that just completely changed his business, his life, how much time he has off, and has really set the foundation for so much future growth. So if you're someone who's doing 500,000 to $1 million a year and you feel like you're stuck and you're working too hard and not making enough money, this episode is for you. So I hope you enjoy. This is the Painting Business Pro Show, where we share inspiring stories from people who are just like you, who have created extraordinary results in their business and their life. We'll take the mystery out of it and show you behind the scenes exactly how these results happen. There's a simple process and a roadmap to follow to create life-changing success in business. You are capable of more than you realize. So listen in, discover what's possible, and let's unlock your potential. Let's go. Hey guys, so welcome to the show. Eric here with Painting Business Pro, and I got my good friend Dustin on the show today. So Dustin Hunter and I, we go back a long, long ways. One of my oldest friends, actually. We worked together in College Works Painting in 2006 to 9, something like that. I mean, it was years. Right. So we were both interns at that company, and then we were both district managers, general managers, side by side. We went on a ton of trips together. We went through a lot together back in the day. After college and everything, he's been running a painting business, and so we've stayed good friends. So excited to have Dustin on. The reason I've actually got him on the show and wanted to share his story with you is because I think he's got an amazing story that needs to be told. He's been in this business for a long time. He's really good at the business. In the last year, like the changes that he has made in his business that have impacted his profit, his quality of life, has been really impactful and life-changing. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are going to relate to to your story, what it was like for you for those 2 or 3 years, like just kind of being stuck. And then, I mean, it's been awesome to see as a good friend. Dustin and I mean, we golf together all the time. We take golf trips together, like we're tight, but it wasn't until about a year ago that maybe a year and a half that we actually started like working together, and I started, trying to contribute to whatever I could to helping you with the business. And it's been amazing. So, I appreciate you, just coming to share the story, and we're committed that this is for people that are kind of in a similar spot that he was in, and that whatever we share can help you make some really important changes to your business that can really impact your life. So
thanks for having me, man. Yeah. Heck yeah. I'm excited to be
bro.
here.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, bro.
All right, man. Well, why don't you just start off by sharing a little bit about like your, Ace of Diamonds, your painting company. Just kind of give us the background, man, on how you got in the business, how it's grown over the years, kind of leading up to about a year and a half ago or whatever.
Okay, sure. I started, I guess, around, like you said, like 2009. I think that was like the last year of College Works, and 2008 is when my oldest was born. Just doing College Works, not making a ton of money doing that, and like basically ready to kind of move on and start the career. And a lot of people were like, well, why don't you just do what you're already doing and just do it for yourself? I was like, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. So, started Ace of Diamonds, had a friend that we did like a building for, went pretty good. So I was like, okay, this can work. And then started doing door to door. Obviously that was my background. And so, Betty was my first customer. I can't remember her last name, but, sweet old lady. We did like the full prime, the G prime, and, the ambassador. Yeah. The OG. Oh, yeah. Yep, exactly. Yep. So, but everything went well, got some referrals in the area, and I was like, I can do this. I still like kind of needed to supplement my income just, with starting out. So I got some jobs, odds and ends. I actually worked mostly during the winter when it was first starting out. Like I had a job at DirecTV or Dish, one of those. And then, didn't work there for very long. Did a little bit of work on the ramp at Southwest Airlines. And then, it was when I was working there, I almost made it through like the probation period. They had like a 6 month period and they just put you through the ringer, and the spring was coming and I booked like 4 jobs and had deposits. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like, so I got connected. I started doing more door to door, just getting real serious about it, push it through. I got connected with a couple roofers pretty early actually. And that was when I first like went from like, I pretty much doubled every year, but it was like 60K in revenue, 150K, then it was 300, and then tried to hire some different people, like manage the production, do sales, different things. Didn't really have like a real formidable training process or anything. I was kind of going off of memory from College Works, that sort of thing. And yeah, just, obviously just busting my tail the whole time. And
were you doing a lot of painting in the early days, or were you always subcontracting the work?
I did do a little bit. Like I had a couple of buddies that like we had a crew and then I had a sub crew. So like I could leave them and go check on the other jobs and stuff. So I did do a little bit of painting.
What, first couple years or something?
First couple of years, I would say, yeah. Did a few, like it wasn't a lot. It was like a handful of houses because yeah, it was just slow.
Got it. Yeah, no, I painted house the first month. Like I did a little bit of painting.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, I'm just gonna make some cash. Like easy way to make cash. But so first couple years, not a lot of business. Like when would you say like this was just like, all right, this is what I'm doing?
I think that was like 2013. I did like 350 in revenue, and it was enough to like pay the bills and have some money and stuff. So it was like, yeah, it was around then. And then, cause yeah, I think 2011, 12, sometime in there was when I was still like doing thinking about like doing the Southwest thing. And yeah, like kind of like undecided, like you're saying. So, and then, yeah, I doubled again in 2014 and got to, so it was like 700, and then got to like that 900 mark. I had my brother working with me, like kind of managing the projection, doing a couple different things. And that was when I really that was the first time I kind of felt stuck. Like I felt like there was something like a next level that I could get to. I just needed like the processes and systems and kind of programs in place to be able to do that.
In like 2016, 2013, you got serious, doubled, and then, you started to get up 600-700K. How quickly did you get up to like that $1 million range? Because that's kind of that range that you were stuck in for a while, right? I mean, you're still in that range right now, but it's different. But I mean, how quickly did you?
Yeah, I think it was like I started to slow down. Like I hit a plateau where it was like only like 100 of added revenue every year, and then finally in 2019 crossed the $1 million mark for the first time. Like it was like barely, but we got it. And then and so then at that point, like I had started to implement a lot of systems, processes. I did the BTA, so I was like implementing some of their stuff. And so I hired a team. I had a production manager, a sales manager, office, and my wife started to help me too. Started to do some work at that time. Again, it was still like kind of a slow growth. I think by 2021 we did 1.2. So it was kind of like 100 every year, still growing. And yeah, I went through quite a bit of turnover with people, especially in the production role, trying to find somebody, because I had my brother who was actually he was really good, and I wish I could have kept him, but it was more like a college temporary thing. Like he never saw it as like a career for himself, so which was fine. So then trying to replace him and find somebody that could actually do the role and stuff had some challenges with that. I found somebody that I thought was going to be more like suitable for the role and kind of being for the long haul. And we pushed some pretty good numbers. Like once we got, so 2022 was 1.45, and that was the most that I've done to date. But, fell short in a lot of ways in terms of profitability, in terms of just how I felt about like the business. I had big ambitious goals. I thought revenue was going to make me feel more fulfilled than it ultimately did. And obviously the goal with revenue, higher revenue, is going to be higher profit. I don't know if I should kind of continue on
Well,
with the
no,
story there, or is that a good stopping
no,
point?
yeah, I'll interject. I mean, I think this is why I wanted to talk with Dustin was like the before and after picture. I think a lot of people get stuck in the spot that you're like approaching, right? Where you got into the business because it just made sense. It was going pretty well, so you grew it, and then you kind of just, all right, let's start to grow and start throwing people in there, and but it was a little bit like you were spinning your tires. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've, golfed enough with you and talked business enough that it was like, feeling like I'm spinning my tires. Like, I have a big goal. I think it's going to be good, but then fell short. This didn't work out, different problems. Like, in what ways? And I think that's what a lot of people run into. I think like there's a lot of people in that spot where it's like, I just get stuck and I try this and I try this and I try this. And it's like, the more I throw at it, it's not getting me anywhere. And I think, in some ways it makes things worse.
Yeah.
It can make things worse. So I wanted
100%.
all right, now let's talk about how bad it was.
Yeah. No,
Like,
I know. But I mean, no, you're spot on, man. Like I mean, I thought I could train my way out of things. Obviously, I'm confident in my own ability to sell, to manage jobs, to manage customers and develop relationships and that sort of thing. Like, and so I could train my way out of some of the problems. I felt like we needed to add more technology. We needed to our marketing wasn't good enough. Like you said, like throw money at stuff, like hope that fixed problem in a fake way. In my mind, when I look back at it now, like trying to force things and ultimately like being stuck because I'm just like, the feeling ultimately is like, I'm working very hard. I have, in a lot of ways, like what should be a successful business. It's 1.45 million, but I feel like my quality of life is low. I feel like my family is frustrated. Like it feels like a really challenging job, and one that's unpredictable and has a asshole for a boss. So, so yeah, I mean, it's like, the guy won't give me any time off. I don't know what his problem is. So, so yeah, I just, pretty frustrated, and I started talking to you and about different things. And, I know you started to like on your journey, because obviously we were kind of like hand in hand with a lot of what we were doing and my understanding of the business. But then, you started to talk about some different stuff that wasn't like necessarily like numbers related and, just like X's and O's and whatever. I can't put it into good words, but you know what I'm saying by that.
can you give an example? Like, what was one of the things?
Started talking about integrity, like managing yourself, leadership development, like stuff that wasn't necessarily like, I have this SOP that I'm using, like that you should try and implement, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So,
yeah.
So yeah, that's when, that kind of piqued my interest in terms of what you're doing.
And just before we move on from the kind of the end of 2022, like that year was like that was like the turning point for you. And I know it's only 1 year later, right? 2023 was a huge shift. We're talking now at the beginning of 2024. This year's going to be huge, but there's a totally different future that's happening now than there was before. So before we kind of transition into 2023 and then like what's going on next, like, so 2022, can you just give us like the actual numbers? So you shared a little bit about like the stress, the experience of it. You're doing 1.45 million. What were the numbers? How much were you working? What'd your team look like?
Yeah.
Just kind of the broad strokes.
Okay. Sounds good. Net profit was 105. I was working still, 50, 60 hours, sometimes more. And like talking about the problems of the business and the problems of my team, like constantly, I with my wife and everything. And then the team was obviously myself, still Elizabeth on a kind of a part-time here and there basis. And I had office, 2 sales, and a project manager, a production manager. The results were still so largely dependent on me, like physically moving the needle. The pressure was higher. The overhead was very high. with that number of team. I mean, I paid for the year just for
a lot.
Yeah, a lot. On top of like paying for more marketing because we need the leads to cover 2 salespeople, on top of like having an office, some other things like that, just a lot of overhead. So the pressure, so like when I'm not seeing results, like I'm going out and I'm doing sales. I'm filling the gaps wherever I feel like I need to, and like beyond just solving problems with production, like dealing with like physically going out and dealing with some of the problems and like, you know, managing some of the projects and stuff like that. So and
so it was just
ultimately like taking a lot of people's crap. Like, like people that work for me, just like tolerating, just like complete. And like, I remember, like you think like my wife's like, you think your friend Eric would take that? Like, like getting mad at me, like, you know, because I'm just like way too accountable to myself and like, you know, the results that are creating, like I said, like feeling like it's, you know, I'm not good enough in some way. Like it needs to come back on me. Like, and that was the mentality, but yeah.
Well, and I think that paints the picture of like, all right, so that wasn't like that year. That was kind of how the last few, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, was that kind of how the last few years were? Like that vibe that was just, is like, man, like the bigger the business gets, the more pressure, the more I worked. I'm hiring this team. The whole idea of hiring a team is that they do things for you, but then you're like working your ass off, even though you have a team that's supposedly answering the phones, doing the estimates, managing the projects, but there you are like working your tail off and paying people a ton of money, and your income's not really going up because you're just pumping more revenue, but all of it's going to your team. Yeah. And it's stressful, it's exhausting, you're working too hard, and you're like so committed, and I'm not just you, like anyone listening, it's like you're so committed to the success of the business. Like it's your baby, you've worked on it so long, like you want to get there. And that's the situation that if you're listening to this episode is like for you, because it doesn't have to be that way. And you can get out of it faster than you think you can and make huge changes in a short amount of time, even if for years you haven't. So that's kind of why, you know, I want to talk to Dustin, because it's been a huge year of change. And so what we'll do is we'll just transition to like, all right, so then that was into 2022. 1 year later, end of 2023, you know, how has your business changed, your money, your team, your revenue, your team, your profit, your hours worked, your lifestyle, your experience? So we can kind of paint those pictures. So it was like on this trajectory for years, breaking point in 2022, and then we made some changes in 2023. Dustin made changes. I gave him some suggestions. Then what was the end? What would 2023 look like? So why don't you share that?
Yeah. So I think, like starting at the end of 2022 was like really like hitting like a breaking point, feeling super burned out, super frustrated, kind of like just asking myself why, looking at the numbers, like cut as much overhead out as possible.
And before we go into the how,
okay,
can you just come to like the snapshot? Like, all right, so then boom, snap forward, move forward 1 year. What does it look like? And then we'll jump into like all those few changes you made that like, just a few simple changes.
Yep.
That produced this huge shift.
Yes, sir. So
sorry.
So yes, sir. Let's see. So we did 1.35 last year.
Down 100K.
Down 100K. No team. Just my wife and I.
Is Elizabeth full time, or was she just doing part time work?
Just part time. Yeah, just part time.
So went from what that would have been 4 full time between the PM, sales, and office. Yep. You went from 4 full time and a part time to 1 part time. Revenue dropped by 100K. All right.
Yep. And did 205,000. So made 100,000 more.
Effectively doubled the profit.
Yeah.
Did a little less revenue and got rid of and don't have a team now.
Yep. And the gross profit went up too, obviously. So yeah. Yep.
And then just because I think you would agree too, like one of the most important things was not just the numbers. I mean, anybody wants to make an extra $100,000. But what was your How did it change your hours worked, your stress, your experience with the business, your time with your family, the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, stress was down tremendously, and I would say just overall feeling more a sense of more committed in terms of like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. Like, this is what this is for. It's a business to make me money. So started to feel good in that way. Feeling a lot more like just clarity in terms of that sense. Like, I don't need to work this much. Like, this isn't my complete identity. And so putting a lot less pressure on myself, having the ego of like the revenue not needing to be there. So what other question did you ask? Yeah,
Well, I
steer
thought it
me
was funny.
again.
Not my complete identity, just a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's only most of my identity now. My
Yeah.
family a little bit
Yeah.
more, you
Right.
know.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
so you said you were burned out. How do you if you were on a 1 to 10 on
There we go.
how burned out you felt a year ago compared to now? What were you a year ago? What are you now?
A year ago is probably 10. For sure. Like,
Dude, that
no
reminds
doubt.
me of like that Michael Scott episode when he's like, "How are you feeling?" He's like, "Well, right now a 10, a 0. Usually I'm a
Yeah.
10." It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. And then, I would say now, like, I mean, at this moment, like, I'm very low. Like, yeah, burnout. It isn't
Probably a
really
zero.
like yeah, probably a 0. So, yeah, it's on the extreme, but no,
I didn't mean to tee it up that way, but it is like I know right now. I know you. I know right now. Like burnout is not really existing for you because of the changes you've made. Like you feel good.
it's just not in my mind. Like, yeah, but it was like, it was so there. It was like, yeah, I mean, basically ready to quit, like ready to
What about
like,
stress? Same question. 1 to 10 stress a year ago now.
um, yeah, a year ago, I would say stress was pretty high. I mean, I would kind of tie those two together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just uh,
Ten
for
or
your
10 or
sake,
zero.
we'll do a 9. We'll do a 9.
What
And
about
then
how about your work hours? Are you working more or less or about the same hours?
now I'm working less, way less. Yeah, I would say last year there was a couple times where I had to work. I mean, with that much revenue, like there was a
Yeah.
couple times that I had to work like some long hours, but it was like it wasn't the same. It didn't feel anywhere near the same. It was like, I know I'm making money, so that wasn't like burning me out or affecting me in the same way.
Well,
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean, just not to step over the fact that like you basically did 1.3 million, marketed it yourself, sold it yourself, produced it yourself, which is pretty badass. I mean, that's not easy to do.
yeah.
And during that year, would you say you were even when you were busy doing that all of it yourself? How did your work hours compare to when you had a whole team of people doing like roughly the same revenue, but you had all those people?
Yeah, I probably, if I could just like say, like, I probably never worked as much in a week as I did the year before, or
When you
like
had a team.
probably like the couple of years before when I had a team. And like the weeks that I worked a lot, like it was maybe like 10% of the amount of weeks that I had that were like that, where it was just like, am I ever
Yeah.
going to get home tonight? I have to miss, I got to miss another thing. And my family just got so used to, they were fine with it, but ultimately, like, are they really fine with it? But it's like
Yeah.
everybody just got used to the fact, like, okay, yeah, this is a priority. There's something like a work related thing that, Dad's not going to be able to be there, or yeah, Dustin's not going to be able to be there, like, kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Like, oh yeah, that's a call you got to take.
How has that changed?
Huge changes. Like I said, some of the stuff, like in terms of just tying the identity of myself and like my ego to the business, like that was a huge shift for me. So like, I'm like, no, this business is here to serve our family. Like, that's the point of owning a business, right? So like, there's been huge changes in terms of how I prioritize my time with my family and being with them, being present for them, placing that above the business. Like, yeah, kind of is like almost ashamed of like the way I acted before.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think it's a common thing because you weren't doing it with bad intent, you know?
yeah,
I mean, you were doing it working super hard to make money and provide for your family.
yeah,
It's this circular vicious cycle that I think business owners do get in, not just painting contractors, like a lot of business owners do, where it's like, my business isn't working, but I'm going to like work my ass off to make it work for my family. But it's this like, but if you're not getting out of it, like
yeah.
we got to get out of it. So anyways, um, for everybody, it's like just a huge, I think it's just so important. I mean, to double your income, work less hours, spend more time with your family, be proud of what you're doing. Stress and burnout from insane to almost nothing it's like a different life. I don't know. You don't want to brush that aside like not a big deal. That's kind of why we're all doing business
Mhm.
in the first place. Like that's what it's about. And that was just 1 year. So I don't know if we'll get into it because I want to talk a lot about like the changes you made because I think those are important. But I can just tell, Dustin knows this, and I can tell you if you're listening that the changes he made like only started paying off last year. So just the trend is like this year's. I mean, what are your targets or projections? Like, what are you expecting this year?
Well, so like my goal is actually to do 1.2,
Do even like literally aiming for less?
and
I feel like
to make 285 on that.
yeah, so add another 85, do less work, and he's working way less than he was in like what the last 7 years.
Yeah. Yep.
And
And
what's happening here is it's called building a healthy foundation for growth. You don't muscle it. You finesse that kind of growth without having to sacrifice along the way. So, anyways, let's transition, man. So I want to spend some, just transition into like the changes you made. And I think that, when you and I talked a little bit about this before we got on, it was a little bit about like that big shift in just clarity, and you've
mhm.
talked about it a couple of times, like, you've mentioned like wrapping my identity up with the business, but what were the big changes that first changed your perspective? Because for anyone listening, like that's got to be the first thing is like, I'm not going to tolerate this shit no mo.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
run,
Totally.
So what led to the first like I'm going to make substantial changes and like the changing in priorities? Can you share about how you changed your mind and your direction with your whole business?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think like just like you said, like reaching a breaking point, like to the point where it was like in a way that works, that's conducive for me and my whole family, or I need to do something else. Like I need to move on. So that was kind of like what started me to think about it and look. I mean, there was some definitely like big transcendent moments, like especially 2022. That's when my youngest son was born. He's born early. It was a pretty like traumatic like birth and everything, and it was right in the middle of summer too. So it was kind of like I needed to be there. Like I needed to be there. I had to be there, and like, but I still, in a lot of ways, felt like I couldn't just be there. Like I couldn't just be present. I was there. I did, but it was like, man, the storm that I walked back into after 13 days of him being in the hospital and everything was just everything is in shambles. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, and then 6 weeks later, we found out that my wife had cancer, and it was kind of like a rare form of cancer that was tied in with the pregnancy hormone. So that was a big deal. And going through that, and then in terms of like the relationship that I was able to develop with my son and everything, because she had to go be in the hospital for 3 days at a time every other week, and then just like what the chemo and stuff does to you, like that's the most I've taken care of like one of our babies. That whole going through that whole experience, like there's so much more to life. There's so much more that I need to be present for. Like I need to be here for my family. They all need me. All my kids need me. Like I wish I had the same sort of relationship like with all three of my kids beforehand, in terms of like
Yeah.
when they were babies and everything like that. Yeah, I think that was kind of like some big like life changing like eye opening stuff that
Yeah.
I went through at that point. So when it came time to really like start making my plan for 2023, it was like, okay, like we're going to do this in a way that makes sense. We got to do this in a way that makes sense. We got to do it in a way that I'm able to make money where, our family doesn't have to feel like they have to prioritize my business over having a relationship, like, and having like a family. So yeah, I think that was like definitely like provided some clarity. And of course, it's just like a huge transcendent moment in someone's life. So yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I mean, first of all, just love you, man. Like, I love you. And I'm
Love you
like,
too, bro.
appreciate the gift for anybody who's listening to it. It's like the gift of Dustin sharing this is wake up. You can wake up to the fact of what's important in life without having to have things like that happen in your life. I mean, something like that happened in your life 6 weeks apart. I remember golfing when you were going through that, and like getting the rare moments that you could get away for a moment with yourself was like on a golf course. And I remember when you were going through it, and it was like really tough, and obviously, and that'll wake you up, but you don't need to wait for something like that to happen to wake up to what is most important. And that's what I think is such a gift that for everyone listening, for you sharing that is like the reminder of it. Like, don't wait for that. Like, you have your kids, or you have your family, you have those important things in your life right now. You don't need to have them at risk or have something traumatic happen to reveal the breakdown in your business to make the change. Because in some ways it was a gift, that's a gift to make that change. And by the way, Elizabeth is doing good now, and son is good now. So,
Yep.
It's,
Yeah.
thank God,
Right. Yeah.
I just want to underline that for people that like, that was the shift that you made to be like, we're going to do this different. I need to prioritize what's important. I'm not doing the business that way anymore. And anyone can make that choice at any time. So what became most important? What was the shift? Like how did you view like your goals with your business and your intentions with your business? How did those shift?
Well, I mean, first thing was like having a team, obviously, like they need to be productive. They need to be efficient, like providing results. You're paying them, right? So that was like, okay, I don't need to have a team right now. Like that's not necessary. Like these results are still going to come, even if, and I was willing to do less revenue than I did. My plan was to do 1.2 last year, but some things changed. I got some, kind of like bigger opportunity, like big revenue type of jobs and stuff that I was doing. But in my mind, it was like, I don't need to do that. I don't need to have a team until I'm ready, until I have a team that is able to like do their job, be held accountable, and provide results. So that was like kind of the first part of it, I guess.
Well, dude, and before even that, like, I think you kind of alluded to it, but I just wanted to make it clear for everybody, like, what became the main goal of your business?
Sure.
Not even like what you did, but like,
yeah,
it was before it was my ego, my identity, I want to drive revenue, and there was some like goal that you had there before, but then like the goals changed, like the fundamental intention of your business changed. Like how did they change? Like what did they change to? What guides your decisions now?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of the business. I need to make enough money for the goals that I set out for, right? And like, obviously like pay what like I consider like my personal overhead. And so that's part of it. That's always going to be there. I mean, that's for anybody. But then to be able to live like a created life, like the life that I choose, that's by design, not just like by default. Like I don't want to just live. I want to play enough golf. I want to, do the things that I want to do. I want to be there for my family. Like I want my family to feel like I'm present, that they're a priority. I want my wife to feel that way. I have, relationships with, my extended family. Like those things are way more important to me, way more valuable. And when I look back, 10 years from now, like doing 1.5 or 2 million or whatever, like that doesn't matter. Like, what matters is that I was there for my family, that I got to see my kids grow up, that like they felt like they had a close relationship with their dad and their mom, like, you know, because I feel like that was impacting her relationship with them too, because of, you know, what she had to do, like be so much of the caretaker, and just like, you know, use the term like short order cook, like, you know, like just like being there, like waiting on people's needs, and like she can't have a real relationship with them either in that scenario. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of.
What would you say?
Yeah.
No, it's good. And what would you? So that's what's clear now. That's important. What would you say was important a year and a half ago, before all that happened? Like, what was driving you then?
So yeah, I mean, before, I think it was just like the ambitions of. I thought like having big revenue, like obviously you know this, like I'm pretty competitive, so like I saw revenue as like a title, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to say I did, you know, X amount of revenue is like just like a macho like ego thing. So that was driving me. I think what was driving me is like even just like the people that work for me, like having them feel like they could say that they had a good place to work, like that, like I was a good boss. And like, so that was something that was there for me.
The problem you ran into there was good boss turned into like the guy who will do anything all the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that's not a bad commitment to have. I know you still have that commitment.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a really different way.
Yeah. Thank you for, I was, searching for the right way to put that, but yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think you said it. I just want to get it all up on the map. That is like, hey, what was most important was driving revenue, like bigger business, build the team, like more. It was that like big and growth. And I'm highlighting that because I know coaching so many people, like that's a big thing, that like everyone's just chasing revenue. They're chasing more, but more isn't always better. And although everyone would say that and agree with it, what do your actions say? Is more better. Like, what are you chasing? Are you chasing more revenue, or are you chasing more time with your family? All the things you said now. I'm chasing more time with my family. I'm chasing a better lifestyle. I'm chasing what's most important, and I'm chasing bottom line profit. Like, I'm in this business to make money, to build it in a healthy way that contributes to my life. Like you said earlier, the business is serving my life. And so I think it's just such an important distinction for people, that it's like so many people, it's like, I'm going to chase building more, bigger to make more money, so that then someday I can do all the important things. It's like, dude, what if that someday is in 8 years? What if it's in 6 years? No, the studies and the statistics are like, you're going to spend, I think I said this when I just talked to Josh, but you're going to spend 90% of the time you spend with your kids by the time they're 18 years old. You spent 90% of the time you're going to spend with them. Like, these years matter. And so anyways, we can move on, but I think that was such a huge important shift for you. And I think it's an important shift that people could start to make. Yeah. That also, by the way, will end up building you a better business.
Yeah.
Which is happening.
Like you said, like, you know, revenue can be okay. Like, but like, you know, from the place that I was coming from, like, I feel way different about building more revenue now than I did before. Like it wasn't like, you know, it was like for other people almost, like the way that the revenue was. And like, I was just going to do that. Like, and that was going to solve everything. Like the revenue was what was going to solve everything. Like it was going to just make everything better. Like, and so but the foundation that like I was building off of wasn't like, you know, it
was shaky.
Yeah, it was shaky. It was built on sand. Right.
Well, let's just transition to that. So you started to allude to it, but you know, the first big change that was made was like you had one person quit, and then you basically slowly like let everybody else go. And I don't even know how.
I started to let go of the team. I started to let go of the sales team first because that was like the biggest, like, you know, they were performing. Like it was a complete underperformance. It was spending more on marketing. The leads were clearly there, and it was just like, whoa, like I would be booking these jobs. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think you and I looked at it, and we basically looked at the numbers and said, dude, if you didn't have any salespeople, you could cut your marketing spend down by like $7,000, some big number, because you wouldn't need as many leads. And if you just did half as many estimates as they're doing, you'd book as much as they're booking.
Right.
So you could literally get rid of them, save money on marketing, save money on sales commission, and you'd have to do estimates, but how much time are you spending managing them? And you were also managing all the bad expectations that they were setting. And we just looked at it. It's like, these guys just got to go. Like, they're not contributing to the business. They're just a replacement. Like, you'll make more money doing it yourself right now.
Yep. So that was kind of the first thing. And then, at the end of the season, like, it was the office person and the PM, and the PM like took a different job, but it was kind of like, it was one of those that like it was beneficial to both of us, because it was kind of like going that way anyway. So
when did your PM leave?
Right at in January of 23.
Oh, so right at the beginning. I thought you said at the end. Oh, at the end of 2022. So basically, you walked into 2023, and it was like me and Elizabeth helping out, and that was like when you ran that. So that was the first big change. Was literally like, and just for anybody listening, so the reasoning there was like literally just looking at the math. What are they doing? What are they contributing? And we just played with it like what if scenarios, and it just became really clear to Dustin. All I did was like ask questions. It was like, what if you did this? Let's look at the numbers. What if you did this? And it just became clear. It's like, dude, I would be better off if I just let these guys go. And so it was just running through enough hypotheticals. Like, if you did this, what would it look like? Until it was just clear. And so you decrease your overhead, you decrease your marketing costs, your sales stayed the same. I remember laughing about that. I'm like, how much you booked last week? You're like, yeah, I sold 55K. Yeah. Whatever. I'm like, what was your sales team doing? You're like, we're selling about 50K. Quality of your production went up because you were managing it. So basically you just swapped out doing more work that was proactive and less work that was reactive. And I'm sure that just for everybody is like a good principle to think from is, if I'm spending time fixing problems, reallocating that time to preventing problems is always going to create better results, right? And that's what so much of your time was. You had a team, but you were working full time fixing their mistakes.
Absolutely.
If you just did their job, there wouldn't be mistakes.
Right. Yeah. And it was, I mean, even like I had them working for me, and it still like was like, like physically like doing their job, like, because it's like it's still going to happen, right?
And also, like you mentioned earlier, is like this. It was built on a bad foundation, which is where, what you're working on now is like, all right, I'm getting a really healthy foundation with this business, which we're going to get to. That was kind of like change 2 and 3. The team was built on not a strong foundation with the business, which was part of the problem too. It wasn't. So anyways, the second big thing was the profit margin.
Yep. Yeah. So we were at like 48% at the end of the year last year. GP.
48%. Okay. So paying 52% to labor and material.
Yep.
By the end of the year.
Yeah. And the year before we were at 43. Yeah.
So went from paying 57% to paying 52, but by the end of the year you were, that was your year total, or are you actually down to 50-50 now?
Now I'm managing at 50-50, but the last quarter of last year was 50-50.
Yeah. So it just took time to make that change. So like, if we look, that was just the second change we made, that like, hey, you're just not making as much as you should be on these jobs, which is a super common problem across almost everyone we talk to, and I talk to, is like, you're just not making good enough margins. Like, you do amazing work, you work really hard, and when you make better margins, you can serve your customers better, which justifies the higher price, right? Yeah. So, I mean, did you even see your sales change when you started charging more money?
No. I mean, I kind of knew about the 50-50 thing, but like didn't really like commit all into it. It's like, okay, yeah, that works for him. But then it was like, no, I really need to do this.
It added that adds, if you're doing 1.2 million with an extra 7%, it adds 70K to your bottom line.
Exactly.
Like that's nothing small. That's huge. That's how Dustin's doing less revenue every year, making more money, because he's making more efficient money.
I'm grooved in. This is, my customers are this way, like whatever you say to yourself. Right. And I was just like, no, you got to do it. Like, it's how many less jobs do you have to do? How much less work is that? How much more time is that I get to spend with my family? So it's like a full-on commitment to it. So.
Yeah, it's direct exchange for like, I'm going to charge more so I can do less jobs, so I can spend more time with my family, make the same money. Like, it's just a no-brainer. And by the way, guys, the reason we say 50-50 is where our gross margin needs to be. Is earlier we said like, yeah, Dustin was at like 6% profit, but it's incredible how common that is in this industry. Making single digit net profit. Like it's pretty, it's all over the place, where people are making 6 to 12% margins. But I want to change that because you should make 20% plus. And Dustin, you can see your way to that at this point. Mm-hmm. My partner Hunter last year, they made like 24% net profit on a $5 million business. Like, you should be making good money. Like, bring some honor to the trades, to the work that you do. That is really good. That you deserve to be paid for. That people are happy to pay for. Like, people are happy to pay for an amazing experience because that's still rare. Like, they're happy to do it because they've heard so many horror stories. You got to charge money. So anyways, that's why it's 50-50, because as you build a business, when you do bring on that project manager and that salesperson and that office manager in the future, you need that 7%. Because if at 50-50 we're making 20% net, then take 7% off of that. Now you're at 13. But if a couple things go south on the year, all of a sudden you're at 8. And you've got a $2 million business where you're making $160K. Why would you do that? Hunter's making more than that on a smaller business. So you've got to have the margin to grow. So anyways, that was the second change I suggest you make that. You made that was the easiest one because it was a matter of like deciding.
Yeah.
You just committed to it.
And I'm going to say one more thing about it. It's just like, I felt like the customers that I did have, and that's going to be a transition into what we're going to, probably talk about next, but like I could serve them better. Right. Like I don't need to have 3 jobs going at a time. I can have 2 if they're at 50%. So now I'm serving these 2 people, not trying to squeeze a third one in there to hit the profit targets that I need to hit and the revenue targets and et cetera. So,
and that is the math is two instead of 3. When you look at, I've got a 20% margin if I charge this number, and if it's 7% less, my margin is 14%. Like, you have to do 50% more work to make the same money if your margin is 14%. So that 7% is a huge deal. I think people massively underestimate it. And if you can't sell your deals at the right margins, then you don't have an estimating problem. You've got a sales problem. And I know Dustin, and Dustin did not have a sales problem. Like, Dustin's got a sales strength. He's an amazing sales guy, right? So that was not going to be an issue. And you probably even have room to increase that a little bit because I'm finding as you get even bigger, you might need a little more margin even. Partly why we want more margins because we also want to compensate our people really well. So like we're not making any part of the business tight. Like I'm not thin on cash, but none of my team is either. I think this is probably the thing we could spend the most time on. Just everything you did to simplify the business. Pen these in the board as you go through them. But that's really what you spent the most of the year. You walked into 2023, basically didn't have the team anymore because it was the wrong people on a shaky foundation. You changed your pricing. It took a while for that to catch up because you had already sold a bunch of jobs at the wrong pricing. Now that's at full swing, which is going to make a huge dent on this year's profit. And then you spent like the whole year simplifying your business.
Yeah. I mean, starting with probably the estimates and just like the discussion that was had with the customers and like what we were talking about, the promises that were being made, what they were asking for, the depth of like education. Like I still felt like that needed to be there because that's kind of how I sell is like educating people. But I was educating them on different parts of their home and things that had nothing to do with painting. So started to just like realize that like that was leading me to do a lot more work for people because they're saying, well, can you do that? Can you find somebody that can do that for me? Like, can you like, and so it was like, I want to serve the customers. Like I want to be there for them, but like, I want to provide the best possible paint job. That's what I want to do. I don't want to, and so like I'm not qualified to do these other trades. Like I don't have a good training system. I don't have a good like system to manage the profit. Like there's no program in place. And so we're doing this extra work and these like boards that need to be replaced and different things like that, like which of course like board replacement can be a good thing, but the complicated it just is unnecessary. It made my workload more. It made the production manager's workload more by like explaining all these little details that like needed to go into the job for the customer to be happy because that's what was agreed through the sales process. So
let me ask you this. So that I'm going to just interrupt. So that your estimates, your estimates got simplified because you quit talking about things that weren't paint related. Your production and project management process got simplified because you weren't doing things that weren't paint related. Now, I think if I'm somebody listening to this and I'm doing that, there's got to be a reason that you kept doing that. Did you have like any fears about not covering that? Like, I'm not going to win the job. Like, what were some of the fears? And then once you made the change, what did you find? Were they true? Were they false? Like, what's the reality on the other side?
Yeah, I definitely had. I was one that was like, I have to do this. This is like, people like need us to do this. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to book the job. Like, I felt like it was like I couldn't book the job unless I did it, basically. And that's just not the case. That's just not the case. People want a good quality job. They want to know that somebody's going to be there to manage the job, that they're going to have their expectations met. And they weren't asking for those things. That was, a lot of this was like, the only reason they're asking for it is because like it's being brought up by me. It's being pointed out to, but like in a way by me, and like that discussion didn't even need to happen. So by me trying to like overly impress and overly educate, like I was putting stuff out there that didn't even need to be a part of the conversation. Yeah. So then they're asking questions about like, can we do that? That sort of thing. So,
huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge deal because, and by the way, it's not just, that's part of building a good, clean foundation. Like this simplification, just this one, Hunter, you'll go through more in a sec, but just simplifying that makes your future project manager's role a lot easier. Or on the other hand, when this is what you were doing at estimates, then your sales reps are doing that at estimates. I mean, it's making it such a complex mess that it's creating so many more opportunities for problems and breakdowns and bad expectations that like it's going to create more problems, more inefficiency, less money, more work. And it's not going to add, it doesn't add anything. It's an illusion that there's a benefit to it. Like the illusion of I'm going to win more jobs by offering this. Like, nope, you're going to win just as many.
Yeah. Well, and like what I realized is like, no, like, again, going back to the efficiency, it's like, we're doing this, we're not making any more money. It's hurting our margin. And we're having to do 3 times the amount of work to produce this one job when we could do 3 jobs in the same time if we were just doing a paint job. So yeah, that was a big part of it. And then I think it's just a whole mentality too, because like in that same breath where you have the stories that you create, right? Definitely like saying no was a huge part of how I felt like we simplified we increased our job minimum. There was a lot of like, why?
To what?
To 2,000.
2K. So we don't deal with jobs less than 2K. So you said no to everything below that. What
below
else?
That, we said no to anything that was like a stain refinish. So it's like if you need a treatment like a front door, right? So we quit doing anything that was kind of like that.
Why was that a thing you decided to cut?
Because it's complicated. There's multiple steps. There's a lot of subjectivity in terms of the finish line and what the quality expectation there is. So it's really hard to manage people's expectations and like find an end goal where this is done and you're happy. Like
another way I suggest for anybody looking, like evaluating your business is, I'm guessing, Hunter, that was a pretty small percentage of your revenue, but a large percentage of your problems and inefficiencies. So you're like, cut it. Yep. Like those are the things you want to cut. And then you've got these like large exterior residential repaints that are the bulk of your revenue that are really easy, that have almost no problems. Like, let's just do all those. So, all right, so cut job minimum, stain refinish. What else?
A big one was that we would get a lot of calls for people that like, can you do it next week? Like, so like, scheduling calls. Like that was something that like we did so much of that in that period from 2019 to 2022. I was like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Like we have a schedule and we have a process that we're going to follow to get the job there.
And that one I would recommend for anybody, and for you is like, that's one you don't want to say no to, but it makes sense with where you're at to say no to it. That's a thing that you need to eventually create a process around how to say yes to it without creating the problems that it's currently creating.
Yeah.
Because those can be some of the easiest slam dunk sales, but you need to have a engineered system and process for how to deal with it.
For sure. Yep. So that was why, is because I didn't feel like, I didn't feel like it aligned with what we were doing. Like what
I endorse I'm behind it. We did that for a while ourselves.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yep.
We worked on that last year of like, how do we make sure that we never say no to schedule again? And it was like a project we had to work out to make sure it was really dialed, where we knew how to move clients and make it work.
Yep.
So I'm with you on that. What else did you start turning down?
Just, and then kind of in that same thing, but like if you had like a multi-step schedule, where you're trying to get us to come out like before and after and like that sort of thing, is just kind of like, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. And then just only filling the schedule like with estimates that we felt like were quality estimates. So we started qualifying people in terms of the lead and kind of figuring out who they were and what they were looking for, and if there was like some alignment there, at least to start off with. So there was a little bit of that too. So
And then I remember there were the two other big ones. One was around, I don't remember the specifics on commercial work, but maybe it's new construction or something, but there was some kind of commercial work that you're like not going to take anymore. What was the type of work that?
Just like industrial type of projects, like anything that requires multiple subs on site, because I would need to be there to manage all the like moving pieces. Yeah, so that was a thing, and then really just delegating more to the subs. And I felt like through simplifying like the estimate process and expectations that we were able to do that. Like we were able to actually be like, here's the job. Myself and my team, production managers and different things like that did a lot of like paint store trips and running around and like, making the subs job easier. And it's just not necessary. Like if they're proactive, if they're calling you the night, that the job is over or whatever, they need something, like they really need you to help. Like, and even that, like, it's like, no, call your own paint in, like, order your own paint. Like, so, yeah. So there was, a big shift that needed to happen with that there was a lot of hours that were being spent. Like, I call it being like a painter secretary.
It's the thing. High paid secretary.
Yeah.
Well, look, I know we could keep going, because I know there's a lot of things you did. I mean, the other day you were sharing about like even simplifying your CRM. Like, where do we take steps out that are unnecessary here? I know that you started turning down some certain relationships with roofers who wanted you to constantly do the touch-up jobs. That you're like, dude, if the price of your relationship is the touch-up jobs, no thanks. And I don't know what happened with those, but I know that was another one. And we could just keep going, because this was like, I know this is a mindset, and just to tie this in for everybody, the point here isn't you should say no to all the things Dustin's saying no to. The point is that he's looking through the lens of like, what's actually most important to me with my business is my stress level, my quality of life, the profit I make, and time with my family. And if this job is not contributing to that, then I'm not going to do it. I'm not chasing revenue anymore. I'm not doing yes to everything. I'm not trying to do as big as I can. I'm trying to do it smart, and like simplicity scales. But if it's not simple, you're going to have a really hard time building your team. So just to sum up some of these like changes, and because we've been going for a little bit here, the first one is check yourself on what's most important. Every day is a gift. You never know when you don't have more days or other people don't have more days. Like, you take advantage of your life right now. Don't wait until someday in 2 or 3 years when the business changes. Like, you got to make those changes right now. It doesn't magically change. It changes when you like set that intention. Then after we go through that, it's like, you've got to have a strong foundation before you can build a team. And that's what was clear for you, for Hunter, was like, this team is a mess, but I can't just like fire them and rehire them, which is what you've been doing for a few years, right? There's all this turnover, but it was always on a shaky foundation. And the shaky foundation was our margins aren't right, number one. And number two, we've made this business way too complex. We need to simplify first, scale it, and then you can make it more complex. And it's really like, I mean, the thing I want to highlight is that it really is that simple. Like, anyone who's in a similar position where you've got a big business, but it seems like a slog managing the whole thing. It's exhausting. It's tons of problems, all this going on, people you can't rely on. You probably, if you don't have a successful team, you probably didn't have a good foundation for them. And if you don't have a good foundation, the things to look at is, are my margins good? And is my business simple enough to give my team a good shot at like succeeding and winning? So this is like, it's a process. There's, I know, you're just getting started. That was like last year, we've talked about like this year and the next year, but it's like, now you actually are starting to build a foundation that can build actually the business you were chasing before.
Yeah.
Fine-tuned, well-oiled machine, highly profitable, with the team in place, because you're building it the right way. Before I'm going to get a couple last things to wrap up with, but any like last things you just would want to share to someone who's like in a relatable position? They've been in the business for 10 years. They've been trying to get to the next level, spinning tires. Things aren't working. Like, anything just to come up with.
Yeah, I think like if your business is super complicated and super messy like that, you feel like you can't make a change is because you have a team and like you have this revenue that's like dependent on those complex jobs being a part of it. Like that's the easiest change you can make. Stop doing that. And then the revenue might not be there, right? Like you might have to sacrifice revenue. Like it will change your life. it will set you free. Like it's an imprisonment. It's a trap. Like don't let yourself be trapped by that. Like it's not the right place to be. You're never going to be happy with it.
You're losing. Yeah, you may lose the revenue, but you also lose the obligation to the revenue. Right. Like you don't have to do the work that was associated with that revenue. And the really complex, problematic work is the hardest dollars you make. And so when you get rid of that work, you also free up time, and you now allocate that time to the higher dollar work. And just pure, like, this is just math, is if I stop doing things that make me less money and replace it with things that make me more money, I make more money. Yeah. And I do it with less stress and more time. So it's just, I know for Dustin, it's like, this didn't happen overnight. This was like, it got easier and easier a year ago, right when it all started. It was like still chaos. I remember December last year for you when you first had lost the team. It was like, man, it was a lot of stuff you were dealing with. Then it was like one change at a time, though, to now it's like, oh, this is like the least I've worked in years and like the most money I've been making and the least stressed I've been in years. And it's only 12, 13, 14 months later. But it happens in all like a ton of little changes, but they were all in like these couple of buckets. So anyways, Dustin, so happy for you, dude. Thank you for sharing, everything, like the highs, the lows, the real shit you went through. And for anybody listening, like our commitment, Dustin and I, before we got on this, was like the more raw, the more real, the better. And this is really just for if it's 5 people out there, 1 person out there that this really makes a difference for, it's worth doing. If you're listening to this, there's going to be something you can download around this that's got like the roadmap. It's basically a roadmap for fast growth, but we've got all the benchmarks laid out for like, this is what builds a healthy foundation and what you should hit. This is the order you should do things in. This is how you build your business plan. That's a free resource you can download that will help. And then if you really want our help with it, like this is what we do at Painting Business Pros, help people navigate this, make those strategic decisions to make the real life-changing changes to your business and for your life. So that's all we got. So hope you enjoyed it. Would love any feedback. And we'll do another update in like a year, because I know this is just getting started. So all right. That's it, Dustin. I love you. Thank you.
Love you too, bro.
See you soon. Later, homie.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the show. I hope you found it valuable. We make these episodes in the show for you, truly. So your feedback is super valuable to us, whether it's, things you liked, things you didn't like, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of. Any feedback you can give us is going to be super helpful as we continue to evolve and improve the show over time. And if you want a copy of the Fast Growth Roadmap for Painting Contractors, which really simplifies the steps you take to building a business, we've got that resource for free for you. Just check the description or the bio where you're watching or listening to this episode, and you can just click and download that for free, and it should help give you a good roadmap for how to build and scale your business like the people that you're listening to on the show. So thanks for listening in. We'll see you soon.